Hey, students, this is Professor Lumadue here, and I just wanted to introduce a little bit into our Globalization Education course, a brief presentation of some work my family and I did in the Papua New Guinea culture, a group of people named the Cafe people. This was a tribe who lives up in the eastern Highlands province of Papua New Guinea, and we actually immersed in their culture and lived with them for about 6 years, learning their language and culture from scratch using a trade language, and then doing linguistics and anthropological outlines and studies to learn how to communicate with them and to prepare an alphabet in order to be able to teach them to read and write their own language and to be able to teach their own people coming after them to be teachers as well. So I wanted to share this with you just to kind of give you an idea of some of the different aspects. And as we've talked about in your reading, I know you've seen that on this in the initial discussion posts and things like that coming up in Module 2 next week. Just analyzing and looking at different cultures. These folks here in Papua New Guinea, they are what we would call agrarian culture. They basically subsist off of their gardens that they plant, and as you saw in the previous slide, just really rugged mountains. And you see some of these little. Trying to see if I can highlight that. This guy here has a bow with some arrows. They do some wild boar hunting, pig hunting, things like that, and as well as some other small animals. There's not a lot of big game animals like you would think of in like Africa or places like that. But they live in these grass thatched roofed huts with mud floors. People are generally, really happy on the outside as you would go in and for a visit for a little bit and just to see them. But soon you realize that they've got a pretty tough life that they live. And as you see here, Papua New Guinea is not in Africa, not in South America. It's just north of Australia. And so it is has been a very isolated country over here next to Indonesia. It's been under a number of different colonial imperialistic powers, from Germany to the Dutch to often referred to as Dutch New Guinea, the British for a while, and Australia since World War II, and then in the early 70s was granted independence, and they run a parliamentary style government. The area where my family and I worked was here in the, like I said earlier, in the Highlands province, which is really just basically considered the mountains area down here up by the coast, where the capital city is, where you would fly into, right here, Port Moresby, this area, the port city where everything comes into. There's also a major port here in Leh, where a lot of goods come in on ship and cargo ship. These islands out here on this map are also part of New Guinea's chain. Um, but the majority of the people live here in the highlands, and they weren't discovered until the 19th century, early 20th century. And there's about 4 or 5 million people in the entire country. And once again, just see the real rugged terrain. The people go up and down these mountains. They have gardens on the sides of these mountains. You'll see in this next slide, they actually burn off the sides of the mountain during dry season. Up in here, you see all that ash and everything, and to try to put some nitrogen back into the ground. There's actually a village up in this clump of trees up here. It's called Abaninatu. And we lived in Magoro, off of Magoro Mountain. Their house is right in here in this thatch of woods. And we'll get a little closer as you'll see. Next slide here, you can see that's a better picture of where our little house is, and then, or was, and then some of the village huts here. And you see how that they farm, with their gardens of really, even on the side of mountains, and do a really good job irrigating. And Here's a better picture of our house. You can see up here our solar hot water heater, of course, corrugated steel roof to catch rainwater for washing and doing laundry and things like that. Here's an office that I built where I did my language and culture study, prepared literacy materials to teach the people to read and write. My wife Robin had a pineapple garden over here. Great fresh pineapples, fresh. Septic tank over here that we constructed. The village is right here. You see a long hut here and then some greenery. And so this right here was kind of one of the main highways as the people would walk. Everything is walking, vehicles really up in the mountains. And there are some roads, but majority of people do not own a vehicle. They'll just walk up and down these paths. And this is one of the major trails, hiking trails that people would take to go up into to the mountains to their gardens. So we were really in a great location as far as language and culture study because we'd see people in the morning as they go up, and in the afternoon when they came back down to do their work, and so it was just worked out really well to do our culture study and language, and you had lots of opportunity to interact with people. And this here is the front of our house. See the smokestack there. We had a little, like I said, we were in the mountains, and you probably most of the time you refer to a country like this, it'd be real hot and humid, and it is down by the coast, but up in the mountains where we were about a mile high in elevation, so we had just a great climate. It was perfect. About 80, 90 degrees during the day. The hottest would be 90, but usually it was pretty pleasant. And so it would get cool in the rainy season, and that's why we had this chimney there. And we actually did have a wood-burning stove in the house. This is the opposite view of the house, looking at our porch, as they call them down under. They call them verandas. So this is our veranda, and it pretty much went the length of our house on the outside, on the long side of it, which was about 42 feet. Okay. This is inside Robin, my wife's kitchen, and this is before we had our ceiling put up. But as you can see, we had all the conveniences, modern conveniences, so that we could live and operate and not take too much time just to do the menial task of getting firewood and things like that, and being able to, work efficiently so that we could put more time into the language and culture study. So we had running water, we had pipes running through, we had electricity. You see here a microwave and a fridge. However, if you've ever been to a developing country, you know that the electricity is not very dependable. So we had a generator backup as well as some batteries and inverters and things like that to run things. And so this was really did really well to have set up like this for us, and worked really well. P&G also has great fruit. These sugar fruit, really sweet. Lots of lemons you see there. Passion fruit, tree tomatoes, bananas, all kinds, about 50 different kinds of bananas. Great vegetables, about 30 or 40 different kinds of sweet potatoes, which is the main diet. That's like their bread. They eat that every day almost. And so that part was really fun. And actually, one of your classmates at a much younger age. Sorry, Abby, I did embarrass you a little bit, but Abby is one of your classmates, and she's holding one of the newborn babies. And they named this guy after my dad, who came to visit in February, and this baby was born shortly after he left, and so they namesaked him. So that's pretty neat. And lots of enjoyable times here in the village and playing with the kids in the village. And this was the village just on the other side of my office. The hut there where Soketi and Kadigo lived, and Moy, who was my language helper. This village over here, this picture is Mehinka, which is the village just across, looking the opposite direction and from the back porch. This will be looking out the front, and these are more people that are part of the clan, but they live on this other mountain with their kinship people. So all spoke the same language there, so that was pretty neat. And just really, really pretty. This was the village mother and father who adopted us when we went in. One village adopted me, and another village adopted my wife. And so they named me Adamuso, and Joshua, who is now 20, he was named Fontano after his village, my village father, which would have been his grandpa. And here you see he's got this fresh stalk of bananas, so it's really good. In their responsibilities in the community, the folks, they all learn different things to do from their uncles, basically on the mother's side. And so here is a guy putting on the grass thatched roof, and he went around to most of the village, most of the houses in the village, and that was his job. This guy here is going out to shoot some birds. He's got his bow and arrow. He's going along that trail that I showed you that ran alongside of our back porch there. And so I was just chatting with him on where he was going. And I would say something like this to him. I'd say, Nenagru, iga nevane. And he would say, oh, Nenagru, kuhurega nebwe. And then, so I would ask him, I'd say, brother-in-law, where are you going? Because I can't say his name in our village because it's taboo. And so he said, oh, I'm going up to the garden, brother-in-law. And so that would be like a typical inter exchange of communication. And so this was neat. This hut that down here is a pig hut. The pigs in New Guinea are very important piece of their culture. It's a sign of wealth, and they actually barter and buy and sell things with those. Not the least of which would be a new wife. And so if you're a good woman, you fetch about 4 or 5 pigs. If you're not so much, maybe 1 to 2 pigs. But this is all negotiated and more or less a business transaction than anything else. This is Paki now up here and sitting on these, looks like bamboo reeds. He's actually weaving bamboo to make walls for the houses in the village. And we actually hired him to weave the walls for our house. And so he came up every day, just worked all day, just sat there, fed him, gave him water. He just relaxed when he wanted to, and he just come up and just work these reeds in and out, just in a weaving pattern, just wove them, and that's just all he did. He had some young people that would help bring him the reeds. You see this big pile back here. Just see how long they are. Pretty long, and so then they could go and make just a bunch. Just usually around about a 7 to 8 foot section. I mean, nothing mathematical about it. Just as long as the reeds was as long as the walls that they would make, and then they would cut them afterwards to fit the house. And if they needed to patch or make additional ones, they would do that. But they would, once they got the reeds up there, then they would take a piece of wood or like a knobby piece of a branch or something like that, and get it to where that they could beat these pieces of bamboo to make them soft and pliable to be able to weave. So that was just pretty neat to see how they did that. This guy down here, Pakin is Soketi. He's one of our neighbors, and he made this stone axe for my dad. They don't use stone axes anymore in New Guinea, but you will find them in the museums and at the markets and things like that to sell to visitors and tourists. But this is much the same way that they built, made these axes. Once the Europeans came through on the ships and things like that and traded, the steel axe became very popular. It'd take you almost 3 or 4 days to chop down about a 5 or 6 inch diameter tree. Time that you'd have to sharpen this piece of stone, and then which is real hard, and they'd file it to where they got it pretty sharp, but still, this would get loose, and the stone would drop out of the this holder here, and they'd have to spend time fixing it, and it was just a pain. So they just loved having a steel axe. Okay, and this next picture is our kids. This is our oldest daughter, Abby. Some of you may know her in our courses, and she's playing at the outline here, so you know who she is. This is T, one of her friends, or probably her closest friend when we were there, and Akume, and this is Pa. This is a son. Our son used to play with him quite a bit. But if you were to guess how old these girls were, I wonder what you'd think. At this point, like I said earlier, we were in New Guinea from 92 to 98, and this was about 95, 96 time period. So at this point, Abby's around 5 or 6 years old. These girls, how old did you think they would be? Probably about the same age, maybe a couple years older, right? Well, not necessarily. They were around 14, 15 years old. So it's pretty shocking, isn't it? But and that just has a lot to do with nutrition. Here's some more of the friends. Here's Josh playing and having his fun. This is Lottie and Nelias, our neighbor friends. They also had weddings, and I told you about earlier how important the pigs were. This here is the bride, and this is the bride's father, or they called him father, but he's basically an uncle. He was the man who spoke for her bride price when this girl was born, when she was just an infant. And so as a result of that, he had some cultural responsibilities to provide clothes and some food and school fees and things like that for the community school, and just some other things to take care of her so that when she was of age to marry, he could go to a village and negotiate with the village elders and on a bride price. And I think she fetched about 4 pigs and some money and some produce and some other things. So here's my wife. She attended the wedding here, and a very segregated community. Men and women are kept apart in public, and there's no public display of affection between husband and wife, and between young people, it's very much looked down upon. Even long stares and things like that, you don't do that either. They get very suspicious of things like that. So, but when this man here and these women brought this gal to our village the day that they were having the wedding, the groom wasn't even there. But thought that was interesting. And then they brought her with a shovel, a couple of shovels actually, and some pots and pans and some food. And so it's kind of like our village was getting a new tractor, a new John Deere, because once this gal came in and people had contributed to her bride price, then she was indebted to work off whatever amount somebody gave. So, for example, if this woman here, say she gave $20 towards her bride price, she'd have to work up to an amount of $20 to pay back. And that's how the village would come up with the money to pay for bride price along with the pigs. So there's a lot of indebtedness and created the economic system that way. The people really liked to cook when they had parties and celebrations, and one of the ways that they loved to cook the most was in this ground oven, like a luau. If you've ever been to a luau or seen It's a Travel Channel or something like that, or I'm sure you've heard about these, but they just dig a pit in the ground and line it with these rocks, these special rocks they got out of the river that wouldn't explode when they heat them up. And usually this was men's work, just like here, guys do the charcoal grill, right? So this is Soketi, one of our village elders. He lived next to us. And once they got the stones hot, then they would line it with banana leaves and put the food in there, mainly the vegetables on the bottom, sweet potatoes, different types of green leafy vegetables, some just all kinds of different exotic things that grew over there that we very rarely get to see unless you go to a place like Whole Foods or Central Market that bring in different things from around the world. But just some really unique flavors. And then the meat would go on top, whether it was a pig or a lamb or something. And they would put that on top and then cover it again with banana leaves and then throw dirt on top of it. And they would let that cook all day. And as it got closer to the time in the evening, they would you would inevitably see the crowd grow, and people got excited about that. The cafe word here for this is Heimata, which is cooking stones. Okay, same for luau. This was Cardigo. She's Soketi's wife, the guy who was building the luau or the Heimata earlier, the one who also made the stone axe. She moved here from the village on the other side of the mountain, that big mountain in that first picture. And so she came in, and which was over on the other side. What that was called Jankutega. She lived with our in our village for a number of years. Been there. She had like 10 or 12 kids, and about 5 or 6 of them were infant mortality. A high infant mortality rate there. So she has about 5 or 6 kids that are living today. And so it's just a really rough life. But she took Robin, my wife, over to her garden, and they went and did some, digging and planting, and they were able to bring back in these grass or these rope string bags. They call them bilums, or in the village they call them kude in the cafe. And so they fill up their kude with a bunch of vegetables and bring them back. Sometimes they get really, really heavy, and they carry bags so heavy that I couldn't even pick them up just standing up. I don't know how they do it, but they're really, really tough, strong women that work in the garden. And that's mainly what the women do is they go to the gardens each and every day to work. If they're fortunate, they can go to the market and sell some of their extras. And you see here, there's different coconuts and different vegetables, carrots, and you can find just about anything at the market if you don't have it in the village. And people would do that if they were going to have one of those big feasts like that luau to get some extra vegetables and things like that to bring in town. So that was back to the village. But the market is always a fun thing to go and see. So in the evening, I would come back after I did my language and culture study, and I would put my data in there that I was learning as I worked through the culture, starting off in the material culture on the anthropological outline, the 8-point universal outline, learning things like how they built houses, what they constructed them out of, materials that they used, how they made their bows, what kind of materials they used to make those, gardening, fencing, all that kind of thing. And then I would come home in the evening and put these on these direct charts on the computer. And also, I would be able to add things into a data program for a library database that we were able to use. And that was important later on for sorting the language sounds when we were trying to come up with the alphabet that we needed to create. I also used language helper sessions with my uh, neighbor here. This is Moy. Sorry, that's a picture of his back of his head. But he was really helpful. I did these every day, Monday through Friday. I'd create these language lessons and then work on them during the rest of the day and study them. And so I basically just set up my own language lessons, starting out with just real simple things like hi, how are you? Good morning, good afternoon. Where are you going? I'm going to the garden. When you come, and then, and so what are you going to the garden for? Okay, I'm going to the garden to get some sweet potatoes, that sort of thing. And then work on some drills for different grammatical drills, like, for example, the pig is a very important part of the culture and daily life of the cafe. So I would ask Moy, I would say, my language helper, I'd say, okay, how do I say I have a pig? It's a furan tetnue. And so then I would say, how do I say you have a pig? A furan tetnane. How do I say he has a pig? A furan tetne. And then I would say, okay, how do I say I have a brown pig? So you'd say, que pasa furan tetnue. Then you're finding out where the colors, the adjectives come before the noun, before the verb. And so these type of things like that. So literally it's brown pig I have, okay, in an emphatic mood, which is the A on the end of antetnue. And on tetnane, there's the A there, and on tetne is the emphatic mood is there on third person singular. So once I have a brown pig, okay, black pig, pink pig, white pig, brown and white pig, or a black and white pig, and then, okay, but if I have two of those, and you have two of those, and he has two of those, and we all have two of those, so you work on your markers that way. So it was really interesting, and developing those and getting proficient in the language that way. We also were able to have some community service. Had a dentist come out, and this guy here, he was from Florida, and he came out for a weekend, and he said he pulled more teeth that weekend than he does in a year in Florida. And people called him the Tusa Abera Behere, which is the doctor of teeth, or Abera Tusa Behere, the teeth doctor. So it gave people a lot of relief, and so he was quite the hero. So all these things, learning the language, doing some community service, immersing with the people, living in their village, all that just builds your credibility and living with them in a culture like this to where you get to the point where you want to teach them to read and write their own language. And so by the time we got to this part, we had already lived with the people for about 2 years. And we were able to obtain these desks, these tables here that had benches built right into them from the community school, the local community school at the government station that was about 5 or 6 kilometers away, where the kids in the village would walk, the first to sixth graders, every day to go to school. But average student or child does not finish sixth grade. It's very rare that somebody gets to go to even to high school or to junior high, and even more rare for somebody to be able to go to university. There is a university in the capital city of Port Moresby, but those who are very fortunate are able to go to Australia or even New Zealand, and some even fortunate enough to go to England for education. And a few have come to the States, to America, for education. These blackboards we were also able to obtain. They were kind of rinky-dink, just kind of busted up a little bit, but we were able to get some blackboard paint in town and repaint these and then put some new legs on them and get them set up so we could build our syllabus charts to begin to practice our sounds and making the sounds in the language and teaching them a syllabus chart and getting them used to reading from left to right. And so here you see we have the syllable chart up there. There's a syllabus flashcard, and in this next slide over here, I've got flashcards, and we would hold those up. We had word flashcards as well as syllabus flashcards to be able to teach the people how to begin to put syllables, pronounce syllables, and then put the syllables together to build to words, and then eventually to build sentences. So this marker here, this little apostrophe, is very important. This one here, I kind of wiped that other one out. But you see this apostrophe behind the A, the and the O is very important because it's actually a marker between a first person singular and a first person plural. So if I say oa, that's just I come. If it's oa, that's the two of us come. And so we had to represent that, and then you see these different syllable conjugations we have down here. Known, no. So we go across o a o a, no na ne, ne no na, fo fa fe fo fa, zo za ze zo za, and so the that way we would start off every day and get the students to the folks in the village to be able to start reading the sounds and making those sounds and being able to recognize the letters using English-based alphabet, because the government recognizes that with 800 languages on this small island, it's pretty difficult to pick one of the languages, so they went with English, and obviously with English being the modern trade language, it's a really good move. So we used English-based characters. Obviously, if you're in another culture or another country, Middle East, you would probably use a script. You would want to use the script. If you were in China, you would use the characters that are Chinese and go, up and down as you go across. Same with in Thailand and wherever you were at, you'd want to follow the government standard there for helping teach your people, because they're going to transition into their local governments and culture where how things are printed and materials. So for us, we had 19 sounds represented by 18 symbols because we had just five symbols for syllables. We combined the and the sound. Whereas in English, we combine the letter A with about 5 different sounds, don't we? The A, aw. And so, it's for us to learn to be able to write and to spell, it takes us 12 years, and we still can't spell everything in our language because there's so much of it is by memory and doesn't follow the rules. But within this culture and their language, we were within 53 days. They pretty much read and write anything and spell it all because it was phonetic based. And so the only thing that we had, like I said, was the and the sound, and they were able to pick those words out. As I told you earlier, I created that dictionary on the computer, and I was able to separate out when there were the and the sound in similar words like hofa and hofa. Hofa is the grass they tie on the roof. Hofa is a type of leaf that they eat. Another similar sound is kafa and kafa. Kafa is a door, and kafa is a rat. So they know that they would shut a door and not shut a rat, and you would chase a rat and not chase a door. So by context, we'd be able to pick that out. Otherwise, you can maybe do like an umlauted A, which is a letter A with 2 dots above it. But that's problematic for people when they see the trade language or English-based, media in town. They never see that umlauted A, which we call it the 2 dots above a letter A, and they reject their language sometimes because they think, oh, it's tribal, it's bushy, it's not very aesthetic looking, and so they sort of reject that. So we wanted to avoid that and took that into consideration. So but it's a very rewarding experience. We're able to teach the people to read and write their language, as well as train local men. This guy up here, Nerbo, and then Moy, my language helper, they were some of the first teachers that I trained to be able to teach their own people. So I basically worked myself out of a job and allow them now to carry on their own literacy program within their own language group. So look forward to seeing some of your presentations as we go through the next few modules. Just wanted to give you an idea of what it's like in a very primitive setting, and all of the, kind of looking at one extreme to another, from this extreme in a very remote, isolated area, and all the opportunities that we have in the West with education. We have a lot to be thankful for. So I appreciate you listening, and hope you have enjoyed this. Thank you.